Emotional triggers. I really felt compelled to talk about emotional triggers because, quite frankly, we are emotional beings who literally think, but mostly people think they're thinking beings that feel. And this keeps us stuck in trying to heal when we have had maybe a bit of a history of, I don't know, intrusive thoughts, poor sleep, anxiety, overthinking, low mood, maybe aches and pains in your shoulders and your back and your neck that you just seemingly cannot get to the bottom of. Perhaps you get acid reflux all the time. Maybe you just get aches and pains. You've been to the doctor, you've had blood tests, you've had scans, you've had this, you've had that, and you simply can't get to the bottom of it. Then this is for you, because one of the things I'm going to say is that in our society, we have been very much told from being a young child a certain collection of rules and regulations of how to perceive the world yourself and how to interact in it. Now, do not get me wrong, some of this is absolutely brilliant and integral and spot on, and some of it is not. And the part that we're going to be focusing on today is a part that makes you very much a human being, but really doesn't get much airtime. And honestly, if people could learn how to manage and master their emotions, then we would not be visiting our doctors at the pace that we are. We wouldn't be having meltdowns and breakdowns. Mental health would not be rocketing through the roof like it is. And this is not because whoever's watching this right now, because there's something bad that you've done, it's just not taught. The doctors don't teach you. I don't even know if half the doctors even realise how much emotions have to do with people's levels of health. And if you were to ask me what the number one actual trigger to all imbalance on this planet is, I would say to you always it begins with stress. Stress, you've heard it, is the number one killer on the planet. That you've heard people say it, but what does that really mean? It really means that we are living in a world which has so much going on all the time. We are literally overstimulated, and now that we have these phones that are, and I'm just as guilty or as attached. I mean, I run my business off my phone most of the time. So, you know, I also have to be very boundaried with my time and energy on digital products, because it's very easy to get sucked into a whole day and realise that you've not been out in nature, you've not actually contacted and connected with other human beings, but you've spent a whole heap of time just being lost in some digital piece of kit. And then you wonder why, you know, you feel the way you do. You feel like drained and exhausted and all that jazz. So yes, today I want to talk to you about what emotional triggers are, what they really, how they come about, and why it's so important to master this. And as you're jumping on, if you're here to stay and watch a bit, then give me an emoji or a hi Sarah, and I'm going to dive straight in. So why do I feel that it's so important? Well, emotions literally are the number one communicator to all human beings from your unconscious mind. Your body can only communicate to you in one way, and that is through emotions. So the faster that you master, oh, it rhymes, your emotions and learn to read them and know what to do with them, the quicker you can rebalance yourself back into your highest vibrational state, into a healthy aspect, into a vibration that is really serving to your greater good. So we have an array of emotions, and some of them aren't all bad. Some of them are amazing. We have emotions like joy and love and excitement, but we also have an array of what we call negative emotions like guilt, shame, fear, anger, rage, apathy, things like that. Now, I'm a massive fan of David Hawkins, who is, sadly, he's passed away now, but he was, well, he's got loads of great books out there. If you love reading, my favourite book of all time is called Letting Go by him. It's all about emotions. And he basically, I mean, he was such an incredible teacher. He was a doctor initially by trade, but then he realized that a lot of the Western kind of philosophy was not aligning with his truth. And then he got into more psychology and spirituality and metaphysics and things like that. And he did a big study on the vibrations of emotions and how they have these insane effects on us. And you don't need to be a psychologist or a doctor or anybody like that to know that emotions affect the way you feel. In fact, in all marketing, people in the marketing world are consistently creating advertisement and setting their shops and their stalls up by emotionally triggering us, because they know that we purchase and buy due to the way it makes us feel, not actually the product, because you've bought many things many times, perhaps not even as good as a similar product, but because in that moment it emotionally triggered you, it made you feel good, and so you just bought it. So emotions are literally dictating, inspiring and triggering us consistently throughout our day. And this is why it is so imperative that you learn how to be able to master your emotions. So what is it then when we wake up sometimes? For example, you get yourself all organised, tomorrow you're waking up, it's work, it's kids to sort, you feel really prepped, and you wake up and suddenly it's like this cloud of doom has hit you. You feel like so upset with yourself because you thought you were on top of things. The next thing, you get out of bed and you go to have a shower and oh God, the hot water's now not working. The kids are now demanding things, you're running late, you haven't had a coffee, and things feel like they are building up on top of us and getting progressively worse moment to moment. You get in your car finally, you drop the kids off, you head towards work and you just feel flat. You feel flat, you feel exhausted, you look in the mirror, your makeup's half down your face, maybe not for you guys, and you feel like you are being roller coastered by some energy that is making you feel like your confidence isn't there today, like you really can't face up to that meeting, you don't really want to have to go and speak to your boss about a certain thing. In fact, you just want to crawl back into bed. You just want to crawl back into bed, shut the doors, shut life off for you and just hide. Why do we have these days? What the heck is happening? And how come sometimes it feels like we're having more of those days than we're having of like ideas of days where we wake up and everything is like just grace unfolding. It's so easy and simple and everyone's smiling and laughing at you and things just work out. What has gone wrong? Right, okay, I'm going to tell you. Quite simply, human beings are born a blank canvas, but from about the third trimester, so the third part of being in the womb, we actually start to vibrationally download information already. At that fine young age, before we've even been born, we're already starting to absorb and take in information. So if, for example, our caregiver or our parent who has carried us has a trauma while they're carrying us in the third trimester, that traumatic experience is downloaded to us. Now, once we're born, we all start to grow up and have experiences, some good, some bad, some indifferent, and that's just life, right? And actually, we're pretty robust as human beings, and we're pretty good at taking stuff and getting over stuff. And the reason for that is because in the moment of something happening, when it's really serious, like maybe we experience maybe we experience a natural disaster. Excuse me, I'm trying to find tissue. A natural disaster, and it's out of our control. Sorry, I'm just looking for 1 second. Sorry, I've had this cold. I'm just like, I have to get a tissue. So perhaps you've been exposed to a situation that was out of your control. Maybe you observed an accident. Perhaps you were at school and when you were younger and there was a fight or an argument and it was really scary. Perhaps it was, parents divorcing, or you had to move house, or you got picked on in the playground, or you never got chosen in the netball team, or you applied for a job and you got all the way through to the end and then you never got the job, or you got the job and then the people in the office don't really accept you, or you feel like you've been left out. You start to experience things that feel what we call traumatic. Trauma is varied and wide. It isn't always a natural disaster. It can be a smaller event. And sometimes when I say to people, well, it's because we've got trauma that we haven't processed, people immediately think of the worst case scenario and think, well, I haven't experienced anything bad. But all of us on a day-to-day experience different things that sometimes can feel incredibly stressful, which would be bracketed as traumatic. So in that moment when we're going through the trauma, we do what we can do best. We deal with it in the moment because our DNA is to survive. But as we're experiencing it, we create some emotion, and the emotion's usually negative. And because we don't have the time or the energy to be able to deal with it there and then, we do something called suppress the emotion, so it gets pushed down into our unconscious part of our mind. So we don't deal with it in the real time, we push it down. Part of that is to be able to survive, right? So that's not a bad thing because we want to be able to get through traumatic things. But the other part is that we're meant to at some point go back and process and finish that incompleted cycle so that it can be freed. But do we do that? No. Why? Because we've never been taught to, mainly. And also now we're on to the next disaster. Or not even a disaster. We're just on with life, We're just muddling on with life. Now, as you can imagine, these little traumas, these little stresses, these little negative emotions start to build up in our unconscious mind. We then carry on growing up as a young person into an adult, young adult into an older adult. And what we start to then do is we start to manifest and create things in our objective world. So events, people, circumstances that actually reflect what we're carrying in that unconscious part of our mind. So we might start to, let's say when we were younger, we felt rejected. We felt like we were at school and there was a bunch of friends and everyone was being invited to do things, and for whatever reason you weren't invited. Or perhaps it was a sporting event and you'd played really, really hard and then the last minute you didn't get picked. Or it could be that you're an adult and you are in a working environment, and this is not uncommon, where you feel like you are actually getting pushed out of a circle, a tight-knit circle within your own office, under your own eyes. And you've got this sense and feeling of like this empty, awful feeling in your heart of not being accepted. You've been rejected in your eyes. And that feeling is not nice. In fact, on a very primal level, the feeling is if we get rejected, that means that we may not survive if we get rejected from our tribe, then we won't have food and we won't survive. This is very primal, very primal. So what happens then is that feeling of rejection, that feeling of not being enough gets suppressed into the unconscious mind. And then as we start to grow up as an adult, we start to create situations, scenarios and people that reflect that feeling. And the main reason we create it is so that we actually get triggered and heal it. But we don't realise that. And so what happens is, I don't know, we're in the 40s and something happens, there's an event going on and some really close friends of yours, and it's maybe not even done on purpose, but your brain instantly goes to feeling that trigger of rejection because you weren't asked, or you felt like you were asked after everyone else was, or maybe they just forgot, or perhaps they thought you were going to be on holiday so you didn't get the invite, but actually you weren't on holiday because they hadn't communicated with you. But what your mind does is it goes straight to that old feeling of rejection, it triggers it. And because that is so real to you from times gone by, it then wraps that feeling around what's happening in your current life and believes that this is being caused because of what is currently going on. But the reality is what's actually going on is you have been what we call triggered. And the trigger, yes, may have a small amount to do with what's going on currently, but largely has a feeling, an experience based on events that have happened in your past, that have collected, that have maybe compounded even, and now something in your now life happens and all that comes up from the unconscious mind and gets triggered, and you feel now totally rejected again. You feel like you're not enough. You feel like people are accepting you, and back to that primal level. So you are scared of not being able to survive, because rejection to you on a primal level equals death. So extreme, I know, but I wanted to really get people to understand what I'm on about here. So if this is making sense, please give me an emoji. And if you're watching this on replay, which most of you will be, that's absolutely fine. Do a hashtag replay and also give me an emoji and let me know that this is making sense so far. So back to the triggers. How the heck do we stop ourselves from getting triggered then? How are we going to be able to move forward knowing that we've got this unprocessed past emotion from past experiences that we haven't processed that now is currently triggering us left, right and centre, and in the moment it feels so real that we want to blame the objective experience, whether that's somebody speaking to you in a certain way or whether it's an event or whatever it might be. It's something on the outside of you that seemingly feels like that is the reason why you are feeling so dreadful now. Okay, so back to what I said at the beginning. We are feeling beings that think. We're not thinking beings that feel. We are feeling beings that think. So when we feel something that is not great, like that rejection feeling, it is a huge, massive alarm bell to get your attention. It's to get your attention and say, oi, guess what? There is some healing work to be done here with this emotion. It needs to be completed so that it can dissolve and move on and you can heal from it, which then means that you won't be creating these scenarios in your outside world and you won't be getting triggered by that particular emotion. How we do that is, first of all, by becoming more aware of what it is that we're putting our attention on. So where attention goes, energy flows. You've heard me say this a million times before. So whatever your attention is on when you feel triggered is the first thing to take a note of, because whatever that is going to lead you back to what the emotion is that you're actually feeling. So the first question after that is, how do I feel? How do I feel? What is it I'm feeling? Maybe it's anger, maybe it's shame, maybe it's a combination. It doesn't really matter. There's no right or wrong, but becoming aware of what you're feeling is the first step of healing. When we feel, we heal. When we resist, we persist. It's as simple as that. The reason why humans don't feel and heal is because we've been taught mostly that certain negative emotions are not good, and in different experiences while you've been growing up, you will have had different feedbacks and different reflections. So for example, you could have been a small child that got angry because something went wrong. You have a temper tantrum, but you then get scolded by your caregiver or your parent for acting that way, for showing your anger, and you get so scared of the reaction, you have what's called a splitting your consciousness. In that moment, you learn very quickly not to behave that way because it doesn't get the right reaction that you want off your mini gods, aka your caregivers. Because when you're a small child, your caregivers are like your gods. So you basically push that down and learn without really chatting about it that you shouldn't do that ever again. And instead what you do is you create what we call a distraction behavior. You create something, a behavior, a way of being that overrides that if it was ever to come up again. And sometimes that can make us into perfectionists. It can make us into people pleasers. It can make us into people that just give, but never put any attention on their own personal needs. Well, again, life's balance. So if you haven't got balance in your life, at some point something's going to give. And if it's about you always giving to other people and never meeting your own needs, at some point that is going to equal you having some sort of dysfunction. So maybe it's you get poorly, perhaps you your energy's depleted all the time, maybe you just feel like you can't cope. All of these signs are consistently communicating to you to say that there's something you need to do. And the fastest way to learn what you need to do is coming back to trigger emotions. Whatever is triggering in you means there's some healing to be done. So once you've identified what your emotion is that you're triggering, you allow yourself to feel it and deal it, you will then start to experience more freedom, more inner calm as it starts to go. And if you find that you are still experiencing it, means there's more healing to be done. As simple as that. So this is the new way to look at feelings. Feelings are your communication tool from your unconscious mind to tell you whether you are in or out of alignment of your natural state, your natural being. When you are in a place of discomfort, it means that you're not in your natural state. When you're high vibing and things are flowing with ease, it means you are. Simple as that. Now, we are feeling beings. We are here to experience feelings. Feelings are not bad, even like the ones that we've kind of labelled or maybe potentially been taught are bad, like anger, shame, blah, 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 blah. They're not bad, they're experiences, and they need experiencing in order for them to be freed. So once you shift your relationship to that, it will shift. So number one is that you're feeling beings that think, you're not thinking beings that feel. Number two is that as soon as you experience a trigger, you need to ask yourself how you're feeling and then allow yourself to experience it so it can be freed. And number three is to remember that you're doing a freaking awesome job here on planet Earth. And you know what? We are so incredibly lucky to be having this human experience as spiritual beings. And part of that is being really open to whatever is being presented in your life at any one time, emotionally. And none of it is good and none of it's bad. It's an experience and it's all to be experienced. So stop stuffing these things down and allow yourself to be finally freed by being okay with not being okay sometimes, and being okay when you are okay. Have an amazing day.